Hi friends! So for this practice you'll want to have a strap. I use a resistance band and a couple of blocks. Go ahead and lie down on your stomach. You can place your hands one on top of the other underneath the forehead. Just allow yourself for a moment to relax here and notice where you're holding any tension. And think about releasing it. Because you're lying on the front of the body, maybe you feel some compression in the lung space, and it could be the case that your breathing is shallow. So bring some intentionality here and make the breath deep and slow and smooth, inviting the movement to arise in the back of the body today more than the front of the body. Start here, perhaps by picking up one leg, the right leg, and stretching it out away from the hip socket, keeping the hip onto the ground, lengthening here, and then placing it gently back down. It's okay if the toes turn in towards the midline. Then pick up the other leg and stretch it out, maybe bouncing it a few times, lengthening from the hip socket down to the toes, and then settling it back down. And then just allow yourself to rock side to side at the hips here for a moment, bringing some intelligent awareness to the back of the body and especially the lower back. And if you know Ujjayi breathing, slow rhythmic breathing, making a gentle sound like the ocean waves, you can invite that into your practice here, but there's no need. You can also just be focused here on smooth, deep breathing, however it feels best for you, looking to take the strain out of it and use the breath as a tool to relax the mind into the practice. Rocking the back body from side to side, and then maybe you want to release the head from the hands and just roll over the forehead a little bit here, just allowing the head to turn from side to side and bringing some movement into the neck. And then you can lift up the rib cage a little bit, stretch it away from the pubic bone, and as you do that, grab one of your blocks. Now you're long and lengthy here, and place the block between the 2 feet. It can be wide, it can be narrow, the hands can be down, the chest can be lifted, or the forehead can be onto the ground, whatever feels best for you here. Squeezing the block between the feet now, tuck the tailbone. Once you tuck the tailbone, keeping the block between the 2 feet, toes pointed, begin to lift the legs up off the ground. Just lifting and bringing them down. So we're going to do this 10 times. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Feel the glutes engage. 8, keep the tailbone tucking. 9. Last time, 10. Hold here, pointing the toes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then bend the knees. Keep the thighs lifting up off of the ground as much as possible, the toes pointing to the sky. And then we're going to pulse here, up and down, just warming up the back body, up, down. So we'll do it 10 times. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Last one, hold, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now bend the knees more, bring the heels in towards the buttocks, hold here, 3, 2, 1, and then release the legs a little away from the butt, bending the knees in and back, and then away. So we'll do it 2 more times. Hold, 3, 2, 1, release, and then 1 more time, bring the heels into the butt, squeeze, thighs are lifting, 3, 2, 1. Stretch the legs out, and with control, release the block. You can leave the block where it is. Take the hands in front of the shoulders towards the outer edge of the mat. We're going to do some warming up in light cobra here. So the first step is to use the hands as little as possible. So try not to press down until you absolutely have to. Exhale. Inhale, keep the legs on the ground and slowly begin to lift yourself up. Keep a bend in the elbows, then lift the chin, the head look back. And exhale. Try to use the hands as little as possible. Head comes down. Slide the hands back just a little bit. Again, using the hands as little as possible. Inhale, rise up, look up, and exhale. Using the hands as little as possible, come down. Feet stay on the ground. Hands come back a little bit. Once again, inhale, lift up, maybe the arms straighten a little more, look up, and then exhale, releasing back down. One more time. Hands come back as far as is comfortable, maybe a little bit behind the shoulders towards the rib cage, pushing down if you need to, but as little as possible. Inhale, lift up, keep the inner edge of the palm pressing down, then begin to straighten the arms, lift the chin, lift the head, look back. Holding here, 5, 4, 3, 2. Release it just a little bit and start to turn from side to side. Stretching the legs wider apart if you're feeling it too much in the lower back, but don't worry too much. We'll release it. A few times side to side, and now this time bending the right leg as you look to it, and then bending the left leg as you look to it. So we'll do that 3 more times. 1, 2, 2, squeezing a little bit each time the knee bends. 3, and 3, and then gently release. We're going to come right back out. You can look up, look back, and then slowly come down and relax the hands. Now we're going to bring a little bit of movement, a little more movement into the back body before we come up. So here's how it goes. You'll swing the legs up, push through the hands, swing the chest up. Swing the legs up, push through the hands, swing the chest up. So you can kind of see how I'm teeter-tottering here, back and forth. Keep the legs as straight and active as possible. A few more times. 2 more. And last time. All the way up, hold, and then all the way back down. Bring the elbows to the ground, keeping the legs down at the lower leg joint. Lift the upper leg up, tuck the tailbone under, bring the pubic bone and the low ribs together here, releasing the lower back. It's an active movement. Holding. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and come all the way up. Let's warm the wrists up a little bit and then the shoulders before we get to some asana. Coming onto all fours, turn the wrists out to the side, the fingertips out to the side, maybe make small circles one way and then the other. And feel good there. When it feels good, turn the fingertips all the way to face the knees, and then finding any movements that feel good for you here. Maybe small circles one way and then another way, rocking back and forth. I like to bend one elbow, bend another elbow. Just find what feels good. Continue thinking about the belly, the low back, keeping those areas of the body intentionally and intelligently engaged. And then when you feel like that's sufficient, bring the hands forward and maybe one hand, palm face up, back of the wrist onto the mat, and maybe both hands at the same time, just whatever your comfort and capacity is here, getting a little reverse stretch. And take your time there. No need to rush. And if you feel good with that, you'll come onto your toes. You get an extra little toe stretch here coming up onto the knees. You can always release that. There's no need to take that extra stretch. And then grab your band. I love a resistance band because it gives a little resistance. Stretching the arms out in front of you. We're going to do a little shoulder flossing. The thumbs face one another. The arms are straight here. You can walk the elbows out a little bit. Inhale, arms come up. And exhale, they go back. And then we'll do that 4 more times. 2. Maybe you hear the cars. This is actually the least busy the street ever is. We're on the opposite side of the ocean. So lots of cars go by. You can just use it, imagining the sound of traffic is like an ocean wave. And then 2 more times. And then up this time, hold at that sweet spot where you feel it's a real stretch for you. And as you hold there, rather than rounding and collapsing, keep the chest lifted and opened, and now lift the low ribs away from the pubic bone. Tucking the tailbone slightly so that you don't overarch the low back too much, causing back pain. 3, 2, 1. Inhale, the arms come up, and then start to take some intuitive movements, thinking here about freeing the rib cage and articulating the thoracic body from the lowest part of the rib cage all the way up to the collarbones. I like to make these kind of small circles, keeping the arms straight if possible, pulling down on one side and then the other. A few more breaths here. Just finding what feels good for you and observing if it's challenging to find what feels good for you. That's part of the yoga practice, is learning about how to come in contact with our intuitive needs. The body has messages for you, but we have to often relearn how to hear those messages. And then go ahead and release. We'll do 2. You can tap the toes if they feel like it was a pretty big stretch. We're going to do 2 more shoulder strength activation exercises, and then we're going to move into warming up the legs. Once again, the arms are out in front of you. The arms are straight here, thumbs facing each other. And then you're going to pull apart, keeping the shoulder blades down the back body. Squeeze the shoulder blades and then release. Squeeze and then release. You can even open the shoulder blades wide at the back body on each release. Chest opens and closes. So we'll do this. If you don't have a strap, you can just imagine that you do, pulling and pushing with the arms. And then last time. And go ahead and release. Come back onto all fours, grab one block in the right hand, face it towards the corner of the right edge of the mat, tuck the tailbone slightly, hollow out the low belly. Be strong onto the left arm, holding the block in the arm. We're going to lift up at this angle 10 times, keeping the arm straight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Last time, 10. Hold here. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and set that down. Release a little bit if you need to, especially the wrist if you feel it. And then we'll go to the second side. Taking the block and pointing it towards the left corner of the mat, holding the block in the hand, tuck the tailbone, hollow out the low belly slightly, and then we'll go up 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And last time, up, hold 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and release, coming into a puppy pose here. Taking and stacking the hips over the knees, and then stretching and walking the arms out away from you. The forehead may need to stay to the ground, but if it's okay, the chin comes forward, the chest comes to the earth. We're just going to hold this stretch for 30 seconds or so. If it feels good to take a little bit of light movement inside of the stretch, do that for a few of the breaths, and then try to come to a place of stillness, breathing deeply into the body. Finishing the exhale, inhale, and gently bring yourself back to all fours. Take and come off of the legs. We're warming up the hips now a little bit. So we've warmed up the shoulders, the wrists, the back. Now we'll work into the legs. You'll keep the feet about hips width distance apart or a little bit wider, and then drop them over to the left, up, and drop them to the right. You can use the hands behind you if necessary, but challenging yourself by lifting the arms is also great. A few more times. Either side, not making too much of a twist out of it at first. But now on this next time, twist all the way to the left, twist the body all the way over, big deep twist. Few breaths here. And then back through center, and then to the right. Twisting all the way, keeping the chest as upright as possible. Twisting, opening, and then coming back. Stretch the legs out wide, not so wide. It's not a wide leg splits position, but a simple Upavishta Konasana, wide legs, seated forward fold position. And then move the flesh of the buttocks out of the way. We'll do a little bit of straddle. Good mornings. You can point the toes or flex the feet here, whatever feels best for you. Keeping the hands onto the hips, lift the chest, inhale, hug the low belly in tight, and then exhale and begin to dip yourself forward. You may not go very far at first, and that's okay. Just finding that point for you and then coming back up. It's a gradual movement and it takes training and time, so don't rush it. And then we'll do 5 more times. 5, 4, 3, 2. On this last one, we're going to release the hands from the hips, holding the position, taking the arms out behind you wide, squeeze the glutes here, stretching the 2 inner upper thighs away from one another, and then activate the quadricep muscles. Holding 5, 4, 3, 2, and then exhale and release, and we'll just stay in the stretch. And you don't have to stay static in the stretch, just find some intuitive movement for the body, perhaps moving from side to side, opening and closing the body a little bit, and just finding what feels best for you. And finish the exhale and inhale, gently rise up. Flexibility, mobility, strength, these 3 things go together, so we always try to combine them in our practices. Bring the hands out in front of you. If you have a really rounded upper spine, and this is very hard for you, the fingertips can come behind you, and the legs probably won't lift very high, but we're learning to activate the neuromuscular fibers so that we learn these movements efficiently. You want the hands down if they can come in front, and then a feeling of pressing down into the ground so the upper back opens and rounds slightly here. The glute muscles are activated, the toes are pointed, and then you're just going to think about lifting the legs up off of the ground. Maybe they don't come very high. The really important point here is to continue pressing down through the hands. 4, 3, 2, 1, hold. 5, 4, 3, whew, and release. Shake it out. Cramping is normal here. And then frame the right leg. Again, activating the quadricep on the right leg. Press down through the hands. Feel that push action, and then lift the leg and lower the leg. And you can just do this 5, 6, 8, 10 times, whatever feels good for you. And then second side. Pushing down here, pointing the toes, and lifting and lowering. Really feel the pressure of pushing down with the hands, and notice how that affects the movement of the body. And then release. Bring the bottoms of the feet together for a moment. They can be away from the body, a simple Baddha Konasana. And if you want to take a forward fold here, grabbing the feet and bringing yourself down to the ground. But it's also not necessary. If flexibility is limited, the hands can come behind you and you can press down through the fingertips, keeping the chest lifted. We'll just stay here for a little while. A few breaths, 30 seconds is good. What we know from some peer-reviewed scientific research is that a 30-second static hold is the most efficient and effective way to increase your range of motion and flexibility. So just one time, even once a day for 30 seconds is enough to increase range of motion. So thinking about holding our stretches when we hold them for about 30 seconds, but using a yogic mindset of integrating breath, body, mind so that you're fully present in the moment. Using that Ujjayi breath if you use it, or just slow rhythmic breathing. Exhale and inhale and gently come up. Roll yourself to all fours. Let's do a little movement. We're going to articulate the spine just a little bit here by doing a few spinal waves. So if you've never done this before, it's a lot about this tuck and release of the tailbone, if you already know, and also a leaning forward and back on the wrists. So we're going to tuck the tailbone, lean back, inhale as you come forward, release the tailbone, look up, exhale, lean back, tuck the tailbone, look to the belly button, lean forward, inhale, stretch the tailbone to the sky, look up, and then moving in this direction, looking up as the tailbone reaches away and looking towards the belly button as the tailbone tucks. Thinking about the pubic bone and the low rib cage and moving these areas of the body away from one another. And just starting to articulate the spine. And if you feel like you're pretty good on that side, maybe you want to go in the reverse direction. And then take a little time here, finding any movements that feel good. Maybe some barrel rolls. Keeping your mind on the low back and the belly. And then come back to a neutral position. Take the hands a little bit in front of the shoulders, the toes, the knees are a little bit behind the hips. Tuck the toes under and press yourself back to your first downward facing dog. finding some stability here at first, looking towards the belly button, but releasing any tension in the shoulders. Let the low belly hollow out. Coming to a place of stillness for a few breaths. Finishing the exhale, look forward, rise high up onto the tippy toes, and then gently begin to walk yourself towards the front of the mat. Find that place where you begin to take weight into the hands and exaggerate that feeling as you come all the way forward to a forward fold. Let the feet be hips width distance apart. Have the hands onto some surface, the shins or the ground. Inhale, lift the chest, look up, and then exhale, release the head back down, shaking out any tension in the head and neck. Maybe you even want to release the arms here and let the elbows dangle as you hold the hands onto each opposite elbow. Try to straighten the legs here as much as possible, working into the hamstrings by contracting the quadricep muscles, and thinking about lengthening and elongating the spine. And start to rock yourself just a little bit, bending the knees, and gently, with a little bit of momentum, roll yourself all the way up. We'll do a few sun salutations. Coming to the front of the mat, bring the big toes together to touch. Arms are down by the sides. Exhale here. Bringing your mind into your body, moving into our more traditional asana. Just notice how the body feels in this moment. Letting the eyes close as you connect to the breath. And bring yourself fully present. Allowing these movements to be unique to you and adapting them as needed. Exhale here. Inhale, the arms come up, stretch up, look up, straight up. And then exhale, hinge at the hips as you fold. Hands come to the ground or to the shins. Inhale, lift the chest, lengthen, and then exhale, plant the hands, taking yourself back into a push-up position, however you want to get there. And then inhale, up dog or cobra. You can always drop to the ground if you need to. Exhale, downward facing dog. In our first downward facing dog, let's warm up the hip flexors a little bit. So take some weight onto the left foot, point the toes of the right foot, and then start to shoot the right leg high up into the air, trying not to let the hip open out too wide. We'll do 5 more times here. 2, 3, keeping that left foot firm on the ground. The hands are evenly weighted. 4, and then 5, bend the knee, opening up the hip here as much as feels good for you. You can even take the head back. And then the foot comes back down to the ground. One big step brings you all the way to the front of the mat. Inhale, lengthen, and exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way back up, palms touch, look up, and exhale, samastiti. 2 more times. Inhale, arms up, stretch up, and then exhale, fold. Inhale, lift and lengthen. Bend the knees if you need to, plant the hands. Exhale, right back into a push-up position. Inhale, up dog or cobra, and exhale, downward facing dog. Right away, taking weight of the body onto that right foot, pointing the toes of the left foot, and beginning to shoot that left leg high up into the air. Try not to open the hip too much. It opens a little bit. That's okay. Just control it as much as you can. We'll do 5 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time, 5. Bend the knee, open the hip, and find something that feels good. Try not to push to a point of pain. Push to that point of like, oh yeah, yummy stretch. And then exhale, placing the foot back down onto the ground. Take the left leg now, big step forward, come all the way back to the front of the mat. Inhale, lengthen, and exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way back up. Palms touch, look up, and exhale, samastiti. Last time, inhale, arms up, stretch up, and exhale, fold. Inhale, lift and lengthen, and exhale, right back into your chaturanga, push-up position. Inhale, up dog or cobra, and exhale, downward facing dog. You can always choose to take a child's pose here. We're going to hold a static downward facing dog for a few breaths, looking towards the belly button. Keep the hands evenly weighted on the right and the left side. Smooth out the breath rhythm. Finishing the exhale. And then if you want to jump forward, you look forward. It's a light hop, and you land at the top of the mat. Exhale, fold. And inhale, rise all the way back up. And exhale, release the arms down. Surya Namaskar B, we'll just do it 2 times. Drop the buttocks down to the ground. Inhale, Utkatasana, and exhale, Uttanasana. Inhale, lift and lengthen, Ardha Uttanasana, and then exhaling here, right back into Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale, up dog, and exhale, downward facing dog. Take that right leg forward, drop the left heel, inhale, rise up, warrior 1, and exhale, right back into your push-up position. Inhale, up dog, and exhale, downward facing dog. Left leg forward, drop that right heel. Inhale, rise up, and exhale, release right back down. Chaturanga, inhale, up dog, and exhale, downward facing dog. Holding here for a 5 count. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Finishing the exhale on 5. Use the inhalation to come all the way forward to the front of the mat. Land lightly, and then exhale, fold. Inhale, Utkatasana or chair pose. Rise up, and exhale, Samastiti. 1 more time, just like that. Inhale, Utkatasana, and exhale, fold. Inhale, lift and lengthen, and exhale, right back into your Chaturanga. Inhale, up dog, and exhale, downward facing dog. Right leg comes forward, warrior 1, rise up on the inhale, and exhale, right back down to a push-up position. Inhale up, and exhale back. Left leg forward, warrior 1, rise up on the inhale, and then exhale, a smooth transition as you come right back to your push-up. Inhale up, and exhale, downward facing dog. Now we're going to do a little bit of the spinal waving here in our downward facing dog as we prepare to do some back bending in our asana sequence this morning. So you can rise up on the tips of the toes, send the weight forward, bend the elbows slightly as you bend the knees and press the buttocks back. So beginning to articulate the spine here in one direction. Don't worry if it feels weird at first. It takes a while to understand the movements, and then reversing the direction. When you feel good, come back to a place of stillness. Maybe a little wiggle from side to side here. Shaking out the head, the neck. Finish the exhale. And the next inhale is going to bring you all the way forward to the front of the mat. Lengthen, exhale, fold, and inhale, Utkatasana. And exhale, Samastiti. Let's make our way down to the ground here. Exhale, inhale, Utkatasana, and exhale, fold. Inhale, lift to lengthen, and then take yourself right back into a Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing, and exhale, downward facing. Right from here, bring yourself forward to a plank position and slowly lower yourself down onto your belly. Bring the forehead down onto the ground. We're going to do a little work in Shalabhasana. So at first, you're going to take your hands back. The fingernails are onto the ground. The toes are pointed here. Exhale, we're going to lift everything up off the ground but the pelvis and the fingernails on the inhalation. So deep, full exhale. Inhale, lift everything up, legs up, chest up, look up. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then exhale and come down. You can wiggle out the low back. We're going to do it one more time. Exhale. This time we're going to add some movement. Inhale, rise up. Everything lifts except the fingernails and the pelvis. Stay here. 3, 2, 1. Then stretch the arms forward. 5, 4. Stay lifted. 3, 2, 1. Bring the hands behind the back. Interlace the fingers. Reach the knuckles back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hands come right underneath the shoulders. Toes drop to the ground. Inhale, rise up to cobra. And then exhale, tuck the toes and send yourself right back to downward facing dog. Shaking the lower back out just a little bit. A few smooth, deep breaths here. Finishing the exhale. Look forward and inhale. Bring yourself all the way forward to a seated position. And we're going to play a little bit with stretching the quadricep muscles. So the left leg can stretch out. Bring that right leg back into a half hero's pose position. And then once you're there, you can bend that left leg and begin to walk yourself back. Maybe you can lie all the way onto the ground, and that's great. This might be enough for you. Thinking here about tucking the tailbone, but you can also be up on the shoulders, on the elbows, or even the hands. If this feels like you could go a little bit deeper, you can hug that left knee in, really thinking about isolating the stretch at the front of the right hip all the way down towards the front of the right knee. Keep the top of the right foot pressing down firmly into the earth, and keep that tailbone tucking the lower back as even as possible onto the ground on the right and the left side. Smooth, deep breathing here. Big inhale, and then exhale and release. Bring yourself all the way up, and then stretch that right leg out, bending that left leg back. Once you get in that half heroes position, the toes are facing straight back behind you. Then you bend that right leg again and bring yourself all the way to the ground. First, articulating the pelvis, so you have a little bit of anterior pelvic or posterior pelvic tilt. And then if it feels good, grabbing onto the right leg and lifting up here, keeping the tailbone tucking. So you have posterior pelvic tilt. That's when the tailbone faces forward. And then you have anterior pelvic tilt when the tailbone faces back and away from you. Finding that great stretch at the front of the left quadricep muscle from the hip all the way through the knee. And breathing deeply here. Noticing how the tendency is to roll more over towards the right side of the body and trying to balance yourself out as much as possible by pressing through the top of the left foot. Finish the exhale, place the foot back down. Inhale, rise up, stretch both legs forward. Let's take a vinyasa, and then we're going to do full hero's pose or supta virasana, reclining hero's pose. You can cross the ankles as you bend the knees, lift yourself up, take yourself back through a vinyasa, chaturanga to up dog, cobra, into downward facing dog. This time, if you want to play a little bit, when we come forward, we're going to bend the knees and come all the way to the shin bones. So you're going to inhale, jump forward, just come to the shin bones, the knees come together. Move the calf meat out to the side and bring the heels in as close to the outer buttocks as possible. The top of the kneecap, the center of the kneecap faces up to the sky. And then come back as much or as little bit as is comfortable for you, finding that point where it's not so painful, but it definitely feels like a good stretch. If you're coming all the way back or even not, think about tucking that tailbone some more, working to get that posterior pelvic tilt, and then interlacing the elbows and bringing them back behind the head. We'll hang out here for about 10 breaths. Noticing if the mind is wandering, and trying to keep it connected to the body and really feeling where the stretch should be happening, and trying to isolate the stretch there and increase it by activating some of the periphery mechanisms of the body, like pressing the top of the feet into the ground and stretching the knees forward. And then exhale. Take the hands down next to you. Inhale, bring yourself all the way up, and then come all the way onto all fours. And we're going to set up for a little headstand here. If you need some cushioning underneath the head, then you can fold the mat back or place a blanket down, whatever's right for you. You can always pause this video to get the props that you need. We're going to take tripod headstand and just work a little bit of our hip mobility and our back bending. So if you're not ready for this, then you can skip ahead, or you can just play with where you're at, bringing the palms of the hands underneath the elbows and in line with the shoulders, so shoulder width distance apart, and making a triangle between the crown of the head and the two hands, keeping the elbows hugging in towards the midline slightly, and then you come up onto the tips of the toes, the knees lift. Maybe here you bend one knee, lifting the leg up, bend the other knee, lifting the leg up, or perhaps you can come up with straight legs, or maybe you need to take the knees to the backs of the arms at first. You can also just stay on the ground here, keeping the feet down as you work the shoulder strength, pressing the hands into the ground, lifting the shoulders up. So whether you're in headstand or not, you can still be working in this posture with us today. So if you're in headstand, we'll stay here for about 5 breaths. If you're just holding and you're new to headstand, come down when you need to. But when you're ready, we're going to bend the knees. you're going to begin to keep the head pressing down into the ground. Let the knees come apart from one another, the big toes come together, and then stretch the legs back away from you. Keep the upper body as upright as possible. Try not to lose the integrity of the hands and the head onto the ground, the elbows hugging in towards the midline, and isolate the movement from the pelvis outward, thinking about bringing the toes down to the ground all the way overhead. Maybe you're very flexible and they touch down, and that's great. It's no problem. Either way, we're going to bring them back up. So 2 more breaths here. Exhale. And then with control, articulate the pelvis, tuck the tailbone, and stretch the legs all the way overhead. Now tuck the tailbone even more. Feel a release in the lower back. And then if possible, we're going to come down with straight legs, keeping the legs as straight as you can keep them. Bring them down just halfway at first. Hold here. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then bring the legs all the way down and bring yourself into a lying down position. Let's release the lower back just a little bit. Even if you didn't go all the way into headstand, it's never a bad thing to release the lower back. On the elbows, lift the pelvis up, keep the lower leg bones down, tuck the tailbone. Think about bringing the pubic bone and the low ribs together, breathing here. And then exhale and release. Press yourself all the way back into downward facing dog. And let's take a vinyasa from here. Exhale. Inhale, come forward, and exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, up dog, feeling it in the lower back. That's no problem. And exhale, downward facing dog. We're going to come into Ustrasana, camel pose. So we're going to come just to the shin bones here, looking forward. Inhale and hop just to the shin bones. The knees are just below the pelvis here, and the hands come to the lower back. There are a few variations depending on your flexibility. You can always use a block between the heels. You can always tuck the toes, and the legs can be wider apart if the lower back is really feeling it. And then for really flexible people, I'll show you some other things that we can do. So we'll take one camel pose first, press the pelvis forward, use the hands to help lengthen the lower back, and reach back and grab for the heels, letting the head come back if it feels okay on the neck. If you're here with me and you can grab the heels, and then pull yourself forward as you stretch yourself away from the heels and towards the front of your mat, opening the chest and the pubic bone. 3, 2, 1. Inhale, rise up, and then exhale, bringing yourself right into a child's pose. Let the hands come back behind you, and we'll release here for a few breaths. And this time we're going to either repeat that same pose, or if you're working on Kapotasana, come all the way back. So either repeating that same pose, sticking with those same instructions, or this time widening the legs just slightly, bringing the tips of the toes in more towards the midline. First you inhale, pubic bone goes forward, and then bring the hands to the meat of the calf. Walking the hands towards the knee joint as much as possible, keeping the chest lifted here. Once you have the knee joint or close to it, begin to lean back as far as you can. Maybe you don't bring the head to the ground today, maybe you do. If the head comes to the ground, that's great. You're on the crown of the head, you're holding here, keeping the chest lifted and the pubic bone sending forward. 5, 4, 3, 2. The hands can come back by the ears to help press you up, coming into a bent knee bridge pose position, lifting the chest as much as possible, and then trying to get some strength as you lift up and all the way out. And then you can bring the knees together and take yourself immediately back to lie onto your belly. So we're really working our back bend here today. We're going to do a low plank position. The pelvis lifts up, tucking the tailbone as much as possible. Release the lower back. And then exhale, come back. Coming into your downward facing dog position. We'll do another vinyasa. We'll bring ourselves down, release this a little bit, and close out our practice. Just a short one this morning. Exhale here. Inhale, articulate yourself forward. Exhale, push-up position. Inhale, up dog. And exhale, downward facing dog. Look forward, coming all the way forward, landing onto your buttocks. And then let's take a wide leg Paschimottanasana. So wide leg seated forward. It's actually supposed to be a legs together seated forward fold, but we'll let the legs be a little wider apart to release the low back. Have a few blocks. The closer the blocks are to you, the easier this is. The farther the blocks are away, the more flexibility is required, and the lower, of course, the block is. So you find that position that's just right for you. Allow the forehead to be supported on something. This is a really key ingredient, and oftentimes people hear the instruction, but then they neglect to do it, to use the instruction. But having the forehead supported allows the body to relax. And that's something that we know about stretching in general and flexibility in general, that the more flexible someone is, the easier and the more efficiently they can tap into a state of relaxation. Take your time here, releasing when it feels right for you. We'll just take shoulder stand before coming into a shavasana. So you don't have to take shoulder stand today. You can also take a bridge pose using a block underneath the tailbone and allowing the body to relax here, or even a wide position of the block. Hopefully you can see that with the camera, and then stretching the legs up. Both of these are okay modifications for shoulder stand, but if shoulder stand's in your practice, then you'll rise up, come all the way into your shoulder stand, walking the elbows towards one another and the hands towards the shoulder blades, and stretching the legs up towards the sky. And make sure there's some space at the front of the throat so that you're not compressing too much there, and then keeping the rounded part of the back of the skull pressing into the ground. Focusing here on the belly button or the big toes, and letting yourself tap into the breath. Whatever position you've chosen, taking about 10 breaths there. Shoulder stand's great because you can really study yourself in the posture, noticing the internal, external rotation of the thighs, the hips, the knees, the ankles, and correcting as much as possible within your capacity. Take a few more breaths here. When you're ready to release shoulder stand, you let the hands go. The feet come towards the back of the head, and then you begin to look back towards the back edge of the mat so that the head stays down onto the ground as you slowly release out of it. Maybe the head popped up at first, but over time you want to keep that head down. Let the knees be about hips width distance apart or a little bit wider, and let's just windshield wiper the thighs here a little bit. The legs to the right and to the left. Coming back to a neutral position, hugging the knees in towards the chest here, maybe making some circles with the hip joint if that feels good. Maybe even taking a happy baby and rocking from side to side. Just any intuitive movements that feel good as we're winding up practice. But knowing that we're heading into a shavasana, and this is the most important part of the practice because it's where neurointegration happens. So whatever learning that you've done, whatever learning that the body has done over our time together during our relaxation, that's where that learning becomes concrete and re-accessible memory to tap into next time. It's where the real changes in the brain happen during the rested state. A few more breaths here, and then bringing yourself all the way out, stretching into a shavasana, adjusting yourself here so that you're in a neutral position, that the spine isn't tilted in any way. The hips should be square at the center of the mat, the right hip, left hip on the same level, and the outsides of the feet touching down at the same point. Tuck the shoulders in and then allow the shoulder blades to widen as you stretch the arms away from you. Don't let the chin be too high up towards the sky or behind you, and don't let it be tucked too much. Just let the forehead be completely level with the earth. And allow your eyes to close gently here. Hopefully you can hear the sounds of the birds. That's something I really love about this Caribbean island. The birds are so beautiful. Wherever you are, I hope the birds are chirping. I hope there are beautiful sounds. I invite you to take as much time as you need here in this Shavasana, not coming out of it just yet, trusting that the video will stop on its own. Thanks for practicing with me this morning. I hope that this practice was helpful for you in your life. And until next time, live mindfully, be well. Namaste.